Good morning, everybody, and welcome to This Can Happen's Lockdown Live. My name is Zoe Sinclair, and I am founder and director of This Can Happen. Welcome today. Why are we doing this? Why are we doing Lockdown Live? We know that everyone has come back to work in lockdown, feeling slightly less motivated than normal, not feeling great. You are not alone if you are feeling that way. And by the amount of questions that we've had coming in about this lockdown live, we know that there are lots of questions. So what's today about? It's about asking your questions, finding a bit of inspiration from other people, learning from each other and trying to help you through this difficult time. So it's my great pleasure to introduce my fellow panelists today who are going to help you with all these questions. So first of all, let's have a wave from Katie Legg, who is from Mental Health UK, Director of Partnerships, and we work very closely with Mental Health UK as our charity partner. Then we have Nick Elston, who talks from lived experience and really is inspirational and speaks to lots of different people, helping them through their experiences as well. And then we have Sarah Allen as well. Welcome, Sarah. She is from RS Components. In her full-time job, she works in VAT. So any questions you've got on VAT, but she also talks from a lived experience point of view and is a mental health ambassador and leads and set up her mental health network at RS Components. So thank you, everybody, for joining us. So how it's all going to work today is, as I mentioned, we have had a lot of questions in advance, but I do encourage you, if you are on LinkedIn, to send in questions via LinkedIn, and they should come straight through to me. Via Facebook and YouTube, please send in any questions. If you want to introduce yourself on your question, please do. If not, I won't mention your name. So welcome, panelists, and thank you so much for joining us today. I want to start off with actually probably the most popular question that we had in advance. We're in lockdown 3. I want to look at managers. The question that we have had in is, what do we do about managers who are potentially dealing with their own mental health, but have teams that they also need to look after? Sarah, you know, as a mental health ambassador, I know you have people coming to you and you are a manager. Can I come to you first on that question?
Sure. So I think the most important thing to remember always is that they tell you when you get on a plane and they're doing the safety process, right? We've all seen that. Most of us have been on a plane. The oxygen mask comes down. You put yours on first before you help other people. And as a manager and as somebody who deals with mental health, if I'm not right in myself, I'm not going to be able to help other people. So that's the first starting point for me. And then I think it's learning that when someone comes to you in mental health distress, for me, there's always the 3 golden rules, and that is acknowledge that they've come. It's such a big step for somebody to come and say, I'm struggling. So acknowledge, be proud of that person, and then signpost them. There are lots of amazing charities, one of which Kate's here to talk about, but there's lots of amazing charities. There's help. Most companies have some kind of employee assistance program. Signpost and then wish them well, because you can't take on everybody else's problems, but you can acknowledge and signpost.
Okay, great. Katie, do you want to add to that?
I think Sarah's point there is absolutely spot on, in terms of you do need to look after your own mental health before you can help anybody with theirs. I think if there's one really positive thing that's come out of the pandemic, it's the acts of kindness and the support that people have shown to each other throughout all of the tricky circumstances that we've gone through. And so I think when that manager is thinking about their own mental health first, to think both upwards to their own manager, sideways to their peers, and also to others in their team to help with the situations around. If they're needing to look after their own mental health first, it might be the case that a peer or somebody else within their team is able to support others within the organisation with some of the support needs that they might have as well. So there's a lot more support there these days than there ever has been from people around us, and that's something that we need to keep hold of and take beyond the pandemic, and not just using these times.
Great. Okay, that's solid advice there. Thank you. Nick, coming to you. January is known as the low month following Christmas, the festive period, and lockdown can obviously is now exacerbating that. What can employers do that can go above and beyond the normal response to help people after, over the festive time? What can we, I think people are struggling at the moment and need to do a bit more than usual. Any advice there?
Yeah, I think certainly from a lived experience perspective, but also speaking to other people around this, that I think essentially it's when people lose hope, they potentially could lose everything. I think that's when we reach the most dangerous part. And right now, we're all kind of bigger picture players. We always like to start with the end in mind, to have our goals, and that really helps to have a kind of positive mental health. But when we don't know when the end is, or what it's even going to look like, it takes away that kind of aspiration. It takes away that feeling of hope. So I think for me, the best thing that we can do right now, above and beyond the initiatives that we can put in place, is to actually just give people that hope. And it comes back to that active listening that Sarah was talking about so well. To give people that kind of, the message I kind of tend to share is every storm runs out of rain, that this will pass. We just don't know when. But actually, even through the harshest of lessons, we can still evolve, we can still learn, we can still kind of maybe even come through this smarter, stronger and happier than we were before. We just need that message of hope in between. And I think especially from a management position, I think they need to know that as well, because who looks after the people that looks after people? It's really tough.
Yeah, and it goes back to the previous question that we had. Sarah, just coming to you, we actually spoke about this yesterday, and you said that there were a few things that you were encouraging people to do at this time that potentially were above and beyond what normally happens. Can you talk about those?
Yeah, so I think we've always, since lockdown 1, encouraged teams to have more calls. Okay, so more non-work calls. One of the things that we're all going to miss at the moment is what I term water cooler chats. Those moments when you're in the queue for a coffee or you're doing whatever, setting up a daily 15-minute water cooler chat with someone around your business or a friend or family member that's not COVID, right? It's not COVID lockdown related. It is, what did you watch on the telly? It's all that stuff can be really fun. Picture competitions are really good. We've had things like show us your desk. Now everyone's working at home. Show us how you've decorated, show us your garden. We've set up a gardening club. And I think if you can promote the message that everyone's in it together, right? Everyone is going through this and everyone is feeling this. No one is sitting absolutely pretty in lockdown going, this is my best life. I don't think. I mean, if there is somebody, please introduce them to me. But I think most of us would rather not. So if you can promote the message of that you're never alone, that's the message at RS that our network is saying. You're never alone. That can help. And fun. You've got to have some fun.
Just on the fun piece, Sarah, tell me about the playlists that you encourage people to do, especially the lockdown ones.
So started in lockdown 1. I did a daily video. Realised after a little while that though I have a massive toolbox of tricks, I might run out of stuff if I started just talking. So on a Wednesday, to make it easier, I do Sing Along Wednesday. It's a Spotify playlist. It's public, so you can go and find it. It's RS-wellness, and each week I choose a topic and people send in their songs and we add them in. I think we've got about a day and a half's worth of music. We started with I Want You Coronavirus tracks. We have Don't Stand So Close to Me by The Police. We have All By Myself was one that came in quite often, and we've done them on a variety of subjects: funny, poignant, and I think it's another way of showing you all in it together. If you can say, hey, on a Wednesday, why don't we all stick this Spotify playlist on?
Great. And and as somebody is saying now, fun is so important. And I think we have to keep you know, we have to keep that element of fun going, because, you know, all this seriousness is just too much, I think, for everyone. Despite obviously us being in a very serious situation, we do need to bring in that element of fun. Turning to you, Katie, I think we've had a really interesting question here of a great idea that other people listening might like too. I'm going to start with Katie, but I'm going to come to all of you. Somebody has said, I'm putting together a 6-week daily resilience campaign for all our employees. What 6 areas should I be focusing on? I think this is a great idea. Katie, do you want to start with a couple of ideas for that list?
Well, firstly, I think it's a great idea and a great question as well. I think a couple that I might pick out to put on that list is one is around the importance of sleep. This is an endurance race that we're going through now, an endurance event to get to the end of lockdown, to get towards the end of this pandemic. And it's important that we balance everything in what we're doing. We need to make sure that we get enough sleep, so that when we get up the next day, we are our best possible selves to be able to start all of the tasks in hand. I think the second thing that would be quite important in terms of resilience is to build in some reflection time every day. Undoubtedly, as we go through the next couple of weeks, there are going to be things that are quite challenging and quite profound. And when you're caught up in the moment trying to deal with that situation, it can be quite can provoke quite a bit of anxiety and an anxious state. And I think it's really important that once you've gone through a difficult conversation, a difficult circumstance of work, to break out some time so that you can really think about how you went through that, because it's likely that something similar is going to come up again. And it's about building your resilience so that when you're faced with something similar in the future, you've got those extra tools in your toolkit to be able to draw upon. So they would probably be my first 2 things.
Really, that's great. Thank you. Nick, a couple of ideas from you?
Yeah, I think the real common threads around the biggest enemies to resilience are around control and choice, I guess, is that I think when we struggle with mental health challenges, for sure, but even purely low self-esteem, low energy, low self-confidence, I think the first thing we sacrifice is choice, actually. And when it comes to control, we cannot control pandemics. We cannot control other people, what they say, what they do. And actually, once we recognize what we cannot control, we can focus on what we can, which is our thoughts and our actions and how we proactively choose to go into each and every day. So I think a lot of this is around kind of bringing in techniques to help people recognize that we do have an element of control over our mental health every single day if we proactively do the right things, even if we're not feeling life. But when I deliver my stuff, it's not like, hallelujah, he's cured. Absolutely not. I manage my stuff daily using the things that I share. So of course, some days I wake up not feeling life right now, but by using those kind of elements of choice, choosing the great techniques have been shared already, as well as the other great things that Mental Health UK have out there, you can do those things every single day and give yourself a stronger chance of being happier, being more kind of fulfilled in that sense. I think for me, that's the biggest element. And I think it touches on what kind of Sarah opened with as well, was we generationally and culturally, we've been brought up to believe that self-care is selfish, that we feel guilty when we put ourselves before anything or anyone. So it does take a lot of fighting against our own conditioning to start to put ourselves first. And it's a really difficult challenge to overcome, but it can be done.
And in fact, one of the tools of the resilience tools could be self-care on its own, probably.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's something that I call recovery with a small r. So recovery as in every single day. It's a really important thing. If everybody watches this now, get your diary out, get your calendar out. Is there a part of your day, just half an hour, that's exclusively ring-fenced for you to rest, recover, recharge, so that you can go again strong tomorrow? Because I promise you, as somebody who's been to that point of breakdown, you can only run for so long until you stop, and you will stop. It's just a case of when. So we need to start to prioritize ourselves as if it were our best client. And yes, that's me. I've probably gone for ages, so I'll stop there. I get very passionate about this stuff, as you can tell.
I think this person that's asked about their 6-week program is going to have about 10 things on their resilience list now, but that's only a good thing. Sarah, to come to you again on this, another area that they should focus on.
So I literally have a toolbox and I write my tools on the card. So when the days come where I don't know what to do to get myself out of problems, I can literally go into the box. So when I was thinking about this, I'm reaching for two. The first one, you can't see it because my camera's terrible, but it's dress for success. And for me, there's a big part of my day is getting up, getting dressed, putting my makeup on and getting to my PC. Because if I do that in my pajamas, which I could, because for most of my day I'm not on camera, it's not the same feeling. And I think that is something you can really do to build up resilience is get dressed for work and then throw a pair of jeans on afterwards, and make that distinction. And then my second one is fun, because it's all about fun. Again, I keep coming back to this, and that is a dance break. At 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I have a 10-minute dance break. I will put my Sonos player on, and I usually start with Taylor Swift, Shake It Off. So it's got to be something that's really powerful that you can sing along to and is stupid, and then just dance, because it will elevate your mood. And I picked 3 o'clock because that's the point in the day where I'm like, I've expended so much energy being on, being happy, being at work, that's when I do it. And if you've got kids and you're homeschooling, do that with them. Teach them how to just take that break. And you know what? You can go back and find some really cheesy 80s songs to introduce your kids to, like Superman and those kind of things. So I would, action songs, it's energy, it's exercise. So I think that putting a bit of fun into your resilience program for your employees is a really big thing I would encourage.
Absolutely. So they might not call it the 3 p.m. dance off, but they might say fun as part of the whatever fun means to you as part of that resilience program. I'm looking forward to seeing this resilience program. I think we've given some good ideas. So thank you. So Sarah, you've hit on a point again. Quite a few people have asked, and I've got some questions that came in advance as well about school closures and homeschooling. They've just added to the pressures at home, and parents are worried about the impact that's having on their children's mental health. And whilst children's mental health is not necessarily a workplace issue, it is, because the parents are worried about their children. Katie, is there any specific advice people can go to, parents can go to for support? Is that something that Mental Health UK can help with? Where would you signpost?
Well, firstly, I absolutely think this is an issue for the workplace as well, because there are so many things in our lives right now that underpin our mental health and our well-being that are being shaken up and disturbed by the pandemic and by lockdown 3. And if employers don't pay some attention to those things, then it's going to be very, very difficult for them to be able to support the individuals in building back up their mental health. And quite often we talk about money, we talk about physical health, we talk about relationships, and included within that is the relationships with their children, with young people. And so I really do think this is something that organisations and employers should be thinking about, specifically over the next 6-8 weeks as we go. At Mental Health UK, we do have a resilience programme for young people, which we've been rolling out with Lloyds Banking Group for the past 2 years, and is operating across 14 to 18-year-olds across the whole of the country. And we recognised that challenges for parents were growing when we went into the first lockdown, and we developed a toolkit for parents, which is on our website, mentalhealth-uk.org, that people can go onto and they can download. And it first talks about, what the difference is between sort of low mood and sort of developments into, mental health issues for young people, and to understand what the differences between those things are, because young people are going through a lot every day. They're getting challenged by new things. That's part of learning. That's part of growing up. It's not necessarily a problem for their mental health. And then the toolkit goes on to talk about how to have some of those conversations with your child and actually begin to have the conversation about low mood, about mental health, about resilience, and includes within that some very specific tools that we run with schools as part of our programme that they can do together. And I think what also is really important in this is talking again. So that I sincerely doubt there is any one parent out there at the moment who is having concerns about the young person's mental health, about their child's mental health, that isn't in a dissimilar boat to somebody else. So albeit that it's going to be extremely difficult to have the school gate conversation, I would encourage parents to reach out, whether that's through colleagues at work or through the parents they would have met at the school gate, but via other means, and talk to each other about how it's going, what's going well, what's not going well, and to share, because I think that's the only way that we're going to grow through this together. Clearly there's no blueprint for what it is that we're trying to do at the moment.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think even Sarah's idea, of having events that the whole family can join in. So, that the workplace organised, listening to music or whatever it might be, that the kids can join in as well, especially, I suppose, the primary age children who potentially aren't at the computer all day with lessons all day as senior school children may be. Keeping the primary school children engaged is tough. And in fact, somebody has just said, my 10-year-old has definitely been up and down and doesn't fit into that 14 to 18 age range, Katie, that you mentioned. So yeah, I think that's the primary school children are, we've got to keep an eye out on them as well. They're even a forgotten age group maybe, and that parents need to be supported with them as well in the workplace.
Absolutely. And I think it comes back to conversation again, whether that's with other parents and even with the teachers as well. I know that life must be extremely difficult for teachers at this moment in time, managing everything that they need to do. But there is a strong responsibility through the school network for pastoral care. And again, having that conversation and understanding the differences between what's a bad day and what's developing into something else, I think can be really helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so just going to move on from there. Lots more questions coming in. One of them is about, this just ongoing remote working. And somebody has said the concern is that employees increasingly become invisible, and those vital cues that someone is struggling can be missed or masked. What tips do you have for continuing to engage and connect to remote working employees? Now, I know we've talked about a few strategies, and Sarah, your ideas as well, but this is, quite key, not just about the fun, but, checking in on people and really picking up on those cues. Have you got any advice for that, Sarah?
Yeah, so I guess it's a bit like what Nick said, really. You and what Katie said in the resilience thing is that you look back, and if you've given yourself time to reflect, you look at what worked. And what worked for us, especially in the team I'm a part of, is that when we went to lockdown 1, the first thing that we did was that we had half an hour together every lunchtime. And it wasn't a work meeting. It was a, how are you? And I've been publicizing this thing for quite a while, this kind of language, right? Language is so important. There's 2 things that you could do during a team meeting, and a check-in, or even by email check-in to start with your employees, that would really help. The first one is the 2-word check-in. Give me 2 words to describe how you're feeling right now, because on Monday I said I was motivated but stressed. So immediately that tells you there's something going on, right? Or I'm confidently nervous, which is what my 2-word check-in was this morning. I'm confidently nervous because I've got to come on here, but I'm confident I'll be okay. So a 2-word check-in can really help round the table or wherever. And the second thing is change the question, because I don't know if Nick would agree, but especially in my worst moments, if you ask me, how are you? I will tell you I'm fine, because that is such a big question. How are you? And also it's a question that doesn't inspire me to think you actually care, right? It's a pass me in the corridor. How are you? Yeah. You don't care. If you say to me, how are you today? Then I can answer you honestly. And we've made that a thing in our rest. And I have watched people now on the corridors come around and they will look at me and they'll go, how are you today? And I know, oh, you're a person who wants to know. so I can be honest and start to talk. So I think that's two things really. Three things: more team chats, 2-word check-in, and how are you today?
Great. And so, Nick, following on from that, some people said, do you think line managers need to change the way they're managing people at the moment?
I think, of course, it has to change, or maybe it has changed. Maybe we need to get comfortable with the change. But I think we need to accept that how we work today in the current reality may be different even this time next month. That's the kind of the rate of change we're going through right now. So I think it's becoming comfortable with change as a manager, as a leader, but also, again, giving people that assurance and having those kind of check-in tools, as Sarah just mentioned. And she's quite right that we're conditioned to do a lot of work around conditioning. We're conditioned to say, how are you? Yeah, I'm great, thanks. How are you? That's the automatic go-to. So even if you do get the response, I'm great. But hence the Ask Twice campaign was actually on the second ask, you get a more genuine, are you really okay? Or how are you feeling is a more open question. How are you feeling? It kind of, you need a more of a yes or no response than that. So I think, of course, we need to get good with change as managers, but also understanding that we also need to show leadership in a very human-centered way. I think that traditionally the way that we've led, the way that we've done business may not be applicable maybe even ever again. And it's constantly evolving anyway. So I think we need to have human-to-human conversations. I've been doing a piece with kind of HR leaders around this on showing vulnerability as a kind of a conversation superpower. So by showing more vulnerability yourself, actually showing more empathy and compassion, you will get that back automatically, kind of that mirroring thing again. So don't be afraid to show a little bit of yourself if you want to get a little bit more back, I guess is what I'm saying.
Great, thank you. Right, we've still got so many questions coming in, so I'm going to go on for probably another 5-10 minutes, if that's okay with you, because there's some really good things coming on. Katie, I think this is really interesting. How do you determine what the line is in supporting colleagues with mental health issues and maintaining a professional work relationship?
I think that's a great question at any time, and now more than ever. Yeah. I think first and foremost, as employers, as line managers, as peers, as colleagues, we need to recognise our professional boundaries. Very few of us, certainly I don't think any of us on the call here, are sort of medically qualified to be able to support people, you know, if they really do need some help and support. And that's why so many organisations put into place employee assistance programmes, etc., etc. I think now, as I sort of mentioned in one of my sort of previous answers earlier on, is a really interesting time because it's drawing out the compassion, it's drawing out the kindness, and it's drawing out the real benefits of understanding how you can make a difference to an employee's life and well-being by taking that step in and supporting them a little bit further. And we're all human beings. We're driven by emotions and feelings, etc. So I think it is important to perhaps take a little bit of time to think about yourself, think about sort of what's important to you in terms of that balance, supporting somebody emotionally and with their feelings and then with their professional need, which clearly needs to go elsewhere, and to draw a line for yourself, really. Because if you do start to take on more than is comfortable for you as a person, that's where things can sort of start to get into quite a murky place. And that line is different for everybody, depending on leadership styles, depending on the way that they approach their working day and their working week. So I think in amongst all of this, one of the things that I've found has been quite helpful, and I've done it again since we've started work this year and started lockdown 3, is to think about all of my members of staff almost individually and think about their styles, their behaviours, their natural routines, and how I need to adjust and adapt myself for each of them individually, so that the level of support and compassion matches the relationship that we might have had prior, matches their need, but without them becoming too dependent as well, and also protects me from becoming too emotionally attached to the challenges that some of my staff might be facing.
I think that's hugely important, Katie, and I think something that everybody listening and watching will really empathise with.
Can I come in on that, Zoe, if that's okay? Yeah. Katie touched on something which is so important, and again, it's giving people that context of why you're there. As I said, one of the first things that I kind of open up about is I'm not a medical professional. I don't give any advice. I share my insights and learnings and stuff. And I have those conversations every single week, because we do encourage conversations by being proactive in trying to provide people with positive mental health. But I think it's kind of like a human kindness wrapped in a flaw, that inherently we feel the need to fix everybody that comes to us with a problem. And I think if we start to take that on, as Sarah mentioned right at the beginning, we will feel that burden. But unless you're a medical professional, people aren't coming to you to be fixed. They're coming to you to be heard. I think now more than ever, we just don't feel heard anymore, like truly heard and understood. So I think our responsibility, as we see it in that situation, as managers, as leaders, is to actively listen, to put the phone down, put the laptop away, truly listen to what they say, but also recognize that the problem that they approach you about will not be the problem. It will be the byproduct. So the byproducts of things like anxiety are like high sensitivity or aggression or defensive behavior or lethargy or insecurity, lots of different things they may approach you about, but it's the byproduct. And again, it comes back to the ask twice thing about we really need to listen to get to the root of that challenge, really the root of the challenge, but without taking on the burden of their challenge, because we then empower more conversations. If we feel that we don't have to fix everybody, we'll have more conversations with people. And I think that's kind of that who looks after people thing definitely applies to people like mental health first aiders. The reason why people get into that position is they have previous experience themselves of mental health challenges or somebody they know, but actually that makes them more sensitive to take on the burdens of people that they have conversations with. So I think a lot of the protection piece actually is around managers and mental health first aiders at the moment, people that have responsibility for groups of people.
And I'm just going to jump in with a very small point, which is this. Be kind to yourself. Everybody makes mistakes. Everyone says the wrong thing or has a conversation and goes, oh, I wish I'd said that better, or I don't think I reacted very well because I was just coming out of a stress meeting. So be really kind to your own self. You are doing the best you can as a manager. Most of us are doing the best we can. And let's be honest, we've all got a job to do, right? So I have got mental health. I've also got a VAT return that needs doing. So there is a balance, and you're doing the best you can. So just try and be kind to yourself.
Absolutely.
And I think I just want to read out something that someone's just written in, because I don't want it to come across from us that it's so easy just to say self-care is important and look after yourself, because I think, it says it all here. The issues with working from home, I find, especially in the middle of the pandemic, is the fact as soon as lockdown hits, certain pressures of gaining businesses, keeping them alive, being resilient means longer hours and less breaks due to anxiety increases over survival of their businesses or their job. Would low performance potentially lead to furlough? This pressure leads to overwork, and employees, business owners are finding it harder to have those breaks and use time to look after themselves. So I know it's a big paragraph there, but I think it's really important. It is easy for us to say, oh, take breaks, find the fun. But the reality is, I think, summed up very well in that comment. Nick?
Yeah, so it really resonates with me, this one, because a lot of the work I do is in the corporate space, and I'm actually the agony uncle for an accounting magazine. Go figure. It was never on the bucket list of things to do, but a lot of the challenges that were exactly this. It was actually kind of said that keeping clients and stuff. But I think the two things to look at in that instance: we cannot sometimes change the game, but we need to change the way we play it. So we need to look at things like, of course, setting boundaries, which we're looking at things like self-care. But actually, boundaries could also be working hours. It could be having the courage to speak to the people that you live with and asking for just some time to yourself. I mean, I'm guessing you live with the people that you do because you love them, or did once, or something like that. But having that courage to ask for that space. But also that piece around managing expectations as well, especially with clients or with your team, is that if the expectations of how you work and how you operate now are different to them before lockdown, we need to communicate that. We need to give people an upfront contract on how we want to do business, how we want to have conversations, even on the basic things. If your response time to an email was 48 hours before, and now it's 72 hours, communicate that. Because unless you communicate that, the expectations don't change. That will only increase the pressure. So it comes back to that choice thing. When we struggle, when we start to have these stresses, we throw away our choice, and we need to start to have that proactive choice again. So work out what works best for you in the frame you have. Communicate that to the people around you, including your clients if it is a customer-facing thing.
Yeah, and just following that, somebody has said, and it's a long quote, so I just read the beginning. Self-care is often a very unbeautiful thing. Important, but it might not be beautiful. It's making a spreadsheet of your debt and enforcing a morning routine and cooking yourself healthy meals and no longer just running from your problems and calling the distraction a solution. It's often doing the ugliest thing that you have to do, like sweating through another workout or telling a toxic friend you don't want to see them anymore. It goes on, but it's important. It really, really is important. Lots of things coming through. I just want to finish on a question here, which is looking after the line managers. So we've spoken about managers looking after themselves and their teams, and somebody has written in the following, which I think is very important. Our line managers haven't had any formal mental health training, although we do have a cohort of mental health first aiders and have developed guidance to help them deal with issues arising due to COVID. In the absence of formal training, my question for the panel is, in the absence of a silver bullet, what practical ways can we support line managers in looking after their own mental health whilst properly dealing with homeschooling and high workload, while asking them to look out for their team members? Sarah, can I come to you first on that? What advice do you have for companies? What can they do, however large or small the companies are? Or if there's anyone on the call that wants to say what they are doing for their line managers, I think this would be really helpful.
So we were in the early stages of rolling out mental health awareness training to every manager, which is something we campaigned for when lockdown 1 hit. So then there was a lot of time we didn't, and that slowed down. What we did do is that one of the ladies in our people team started a management matters call, and every Friday, every manager in electrocomponents globally gets on the phone, and they can have open and honest, it's not recorded, it is an open, honest discussion about, I'm struggling this week because of my team, because of this, what are you doing? And they trade ideas. I think that it always comes back to the same thing with me for mental health awareness training support. Talk. There will always be somebody else in the same situation who has done it. It's like a Google search. You never search for something on Google and you're the first person who's done it. It's the same with mental health. There's people who's going to be there. And so I would say support each other, support yourselves. If you can have an employee-led network, that is a really good resource, because those people are the people who can go and find the links, the signposts, who can be there to support. Mental health first aiders in RS have their own support group, so they can talk to each other to get that off. I think it's about talking, being honest, being open. And one thing I will say is that RS stepped up for us last year, and at about the 7-8 week point into lockdown, and we were working hard and we were working long hours, they said, you should take your annual leave, and we are encouraging you to do it, even though it feels like you want to save it all for the end of the pandemic and go on a 6-week cruise. You need to take those same breaks that you would have given yourself. So I take a week off every 3 months as part of my mental health plan. I still did that during lockdown. So I'd encourage people to also take the breaks. It's the kindness. So talk, be kind, and gather. That's my kind of message.
Brilliant. And Katie, really just finally coming back to you, to these line managers specifically, potentially with no formal training. I love the idea of the management online, management matters. Brilliant. Anything else that you could give, Katie?
I think the thing that I find most effective myself as a manager, but also we train a lot of other organisations in using, is the Wellbeing Action Plan. And anybody can contact me on LinkedIn or Twitter afterwards to get the document and to have a conversation about it. And it's a really, really simple couple of page document with only about half a dozen questions that encourages the employee to think about what the world looks like when things are going well for them and what the world looks like when things aren't going well, and identifying what some of the triggers can be, and also some of the things that a line manager or the individual can do for themselves to make that circumstance better. And I did that for the first time for myself, coming into this New Year's worth of work. And whilst I didn't really find the silver bullets for me, the things that make me feel better and can dig me out of difficult situations, what I did find were the things that make my day worse and can send me into a slightly more anxious state. And having done that for myself, as well as preaching to my team to do that, has been really important. And some of the things on my wellbeing action plan, I'm talking not only to my line manager about, because he can help with some of those things, but I'm also talking to some of my peers about as well. And I think one of the things that is quite important for probably for most businesses, if not all, over the next 6-8 weeks or so, is that the world has slowed down a lot. So we are very good at putting pressure on ourselves to get things done, to set deadlines, etc., etc. And I think it's about really challenging yourself as to what needs doing when, to allow yourself to have those conversations, to complete that form as I suggested, and to encourage your team to complete it as well, because it can lift some of the pressure off of you from your team through self-help by them, and indeed the same for you, and encourage you to use your line manager as support as well.
Fantastic. And Katie, I think that's a really great place to end this session on. I really feel that the three of you, you and the audience, this has been a really an uplifting session and a collaborative session. And I think a lot of people will go away with ideas. We know it's not a great time, but I think there are ideas to be able to keep people going. So Sarah, Katie, Nick, thank you so much for joining us today. And everybody who's logged in now, and even if you're watching it afterwards, thank you for listening, thank you for joining. Do follow us on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube if you haven't already, so you'll be told all about these sessions. Just as a final point, I just wanted to say that a couple of questions have come in about domestic abuse and what companies can be doing at this time. I haven't been able to get to those questions, but I would like to signpost you to womensaid.org.uk, and also to another organisation called standpool.org. And also, we at the last conference, we did a session on domestic abuse, and the video can be found on our website. So if anyone is concerned about that or looking to do something on that in their organisation, I would urge you to contact those organisations and look at that video. So thank you very much indeed, everyone, for joining us. We may very well do another one of these already, because I've seen lots of more questions coming in. But thank you, everyone. Have a good rest of your day and a good weekend. Thank you for joining us.